Welcome to episode 178, the beginning of season 5, at least as it relates to the English podcast. As always, your host, Mike. I am joined by Bill. We got a light squad today. Gentlemen are busy, and we had to reschedule a couple of times for us to kick this off. But nonetheless, we are finally here, a few days short of the season kicking off. Before we get everything started, Bill, how does it feel to be back?
Feels good to be back. Nice little Euro break, but always miss the chatter with the fellow Benfiquista. So it's good to be back.
It is. We've got a lot to cover. It's been an interesting off season. Lots of rumors, lots of controversy, lots of debate, lots of disagreements. You name it, we've had it. But it's no different than any other preseason at Benfica, or any other day for that matter, as a Benfica fan. So for those of you who are tuning in, as always, please don't hesitate. Leave us your comments. Let us know that you are there, that you are tuning in, that you're listening. Let us know your feedback. If you have questions, comments, of course, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, follow, share. If you're watching on YouTube, give us a thumbs up on the video. We would appreciate it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do that as well. And again, make this interactive. We're open to your thoughts, and we'll also post a link a little bit later if you want to jump in and join the conversation. Today, we are going to talk about transfer review, incoming, outgoing. Naturally, the João Neves conversation is probably going to take up most of that time. But, you know, we've had some incoming as well. Pavlidis has hit the ground running. We'll talk about the Greek god that has landed in Lisbon. We've had some decent fortune with some Greek players over the last few, I guess, transfers, at least some of the more recent ones. Yeah. We will also talk about preseason vibes. We've played, 6 matches, 6 preseason matches, 3 wins, 2 draws, 1 loss. We closed out the preseason with a defeat. But we'll talk about, you know, how are we feeling? What did we see? What did we not like? We'll talk about what's our feeling going to the season. Big game, Famalicão, after how the season ended last year. Starting off this season with a W and a good performance is going to be important. And we have our predicted 11s for the match against Famalicão. Interesting enough, between the 5 of us, Kenny hasn't had an opportunity for much preseason action. And before I forget, shout out to him. I don't think we've done a podcast since he's welcomed, him and his wife have welcomed a new tiny human into the world. So we have a new Benfiquista, Mateo, who has joined us. So wanted to give a shout out to Kenny and his wife, and congratulations, baby's healthy, everyone's doing well. So he's had a lot going on. So he didn't predict his 11, but we got the 4 others. We've predicted 11, and 3 of the 4 are different, which is interesting. And those 11s are based on current players that are available. Obviously, the Di Marias and stuff of the world probably aren't going to play against Famalicão, so we didn't include them. Let's get started. So, transfer review. Incoming. Do we want to start with incoming or outgoing first? I'll let you pick.
Let's just do incoming. Start off with some good vibes.
Okay. All right. And quickly, Master PT, grandes, abraço para ti. César da Silva, good day, boys. Welcome back, César. The Águia ao Peito, saudações benfiquistas. Abraço para ti, de Águia ao Peito. E desde já, quem esteja a ver em português, podem participar aqui em português. Este é o nosso podcast em inglês. Temos um painel diferente, geralmente às quartas-feiras, um podcast em português. Mas ambos percebemos e falamos português, por isso esteja à vontade de participar aqui nesta nossa conversa. You said incoming?
Yeah.
Okay. We had Pavlidis, 25 or 18 million. And then there were some objectives. I can't remember what it was, maybe 2 million. We had Jan Nicholas Best for 8 million from Heidenheim in the Bundesliga. Pavlidis came from AZ Alkmaar. We had Alvaro Carreras, who was on loan, but we ended up buying on a permanent for 6 million from Manchester United. Leandro Barreiro, who was at Mainz, we had essentially signed him in January, but it only obviously became official in the summer. Gustavo Marques, who was here on loan, and then we ended up purchasing from America Minas Gerais from the Serie B. 22, he's most likely going to be on the B team. And Renato Sanchez, who falls into the category of discussion with Joe Neves.
Yep.
Of these incomings, I would say, and you probably agree, that of all of those, Pavlidis is probably the most impact, at least as of right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's safe to say. He's doing what we all hoped Cabral was going to do when we signed him last year, right? Just come in and like from the start, right? His first goal, first preseason game. Yes, it was a fortunate tap in, but right spot, right time, puts it in the back of the net, builds confidence. He's definitely been, in my opinion, the striker we've kind of been wanting since, well, Ramos left, right? It was only one season, but it was a striker we desperately needed, and we struggled last year with finding the back of the net, and he seems to be one of those players that is a pure goal scorer, right? So far, we haven't seen him take on 7 or 8 dudes to find one, right? But he's putting himself in the right spots. He's a striker, right? You got to be in the right spots to put the ball in the back of the net, and he's doing it. He doesn't take too many chances to be able to score one. Like he's finding it off of 1 or 2 opportunities, and that's a great sign. I mean, it's preseason, so you take it with a grain of salt, but to start, I mean, can't ask for better for your big signing in the summer, and for a position that was so desperately needed last year, and we struggled, to get a guy like that to come in and hit the ground and kind of calm a little bit the fans' nerves with the striker. I think it's been great.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's got 7 goals in the preseason so far. He nearly killed himself against Ferenc, if I'm not mistaken, when he did some Simone Biles flips over
they
that
didn't close
staircase.
like the staircase. Yeah,
Typical Portuguese league situation. But I mean, yeah, 7 goals in the preseason. He's looked really good. The way he runs reminds me a lot of Mitroglou. I don't know if it's a Greek thing. But like you said, I think the key here is he doesn't waste too many opportunities, right? Which, as a striker, typically you'd assume on a team like Benfica, you're going to get a decent amount of opportunities. But there's going to be those games where you get 1, where you get 2, right? And you have to have someone that can put those away. Now, obviously not saying that he's going to score every game. He didn't score against Fulham. But again, like having a guy of his caliber, at least from what we've seen, I think is important. And looking back at his, previous years, he was at Willem, if I'm not mistaken, in 2020, 21. And then 21-22, he was at Alkmaar, which is his first year. He had 25 goals, 7 assists, and 51 appearances. So 25 goals in all competitions. And then in 2022-23, he had 22 goals, 14 assists, and 40 appearances. And then his last year with Alkmaar, he had 33 goals and 6 assists and 46 appearances, right? So he's a guy that, he's averaged over 20 goals his last 3 seasons. He's a guy that gets decent amount of assists. You could say what you want about the Dutch league. It's probably more competitive top to bottom than the Portuguese league. But again, that's obviously debatable, but I think we've seen good signs of him coming to a different country. And like I had said, right, like I think we've had some decent fortune with Greek players. We had Mitroglou, we've had Samaris, we've had a handful.
We've had some good
Katsouranis.
ones.
Yeah, we had Fisas many years ago. We had, for those of you who remember the dark years, Machairidis from PAOK many, many years ago. So, I mean, we're headed in the right direction. Hopefully he's like the guy, like you said, the guy that can take us to the promised land and get things done. Diago Peitu says, finally, it looks like we found the right striker. Probably is the real deal. He plays exceptionally well. What a star. Again, I don't think anyone can debate that. Let's see if he can turn that into productivity in the real games.
His playing style and like his work off the ball and defensively, it fits what Roger wants to do. Whereas like Cabral last, like it just didn't. You could tell like it. He was not a player that's going to be pressing that back line as soon as you lose the ball. Whereas he's putting that work in, and he's. I mean, the entire team is pressing like we did the first season. But I mean, it starts with the striker, and last year we didn't have a striker that could do that, and this year early on, it looks like we have a guy that's willing to put that work in.
Yeah, I agree. Next one here, Jan Nicholas Best. We've seen 2 or 3 matches out of him. Coming from Heidenheim, he scored quite a few goals. He gets quite a few assists. He was part of the preliminary list of players for the Euro for Nagelsmann. He didn't end up making the final cut, but Nagelsmann has had over the last few years some pretty good words to say about him in terms of his work ethic, in terms of what he brings to the field, what he brings to the team. Again, another 25-year-old German. Roger Schmidt had some good words to say about him in the interview that he had with Tony, in terms of his capability to press, in terms of his capability to recover, sprints, changes of pace, getting up and down the line. He takes free kicks well. He takes corner kicks well. So it's another weapon that we have on dead balls. What have you, if anything, seen from him that kind of stands out to you?
I think he's more of a player that fits into that, like, kind of the Grimaldo mold, right? The style of play. Not, I mean, I think Grimaldo is a bit different, but I think the style of player where they like to get forward, they like to be on the ball, can take free kicks, can cross the ball well. And I think it's Carreras, I think, can grow into that, but I don't like, he's super young. So I'd like that they went with a more established, older player rather than bring in another young guy and have 2 super young left backs. But from what we've seen of Best, it's only been the last 2 games I think he's played.
Yeah, 2 or 3, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. But I mean, I've liked what I've seen. I think he looks a little more solid defensively than Carreras. Carreras to me still seems a bit. I mean, it comes with age too. Like if you feel like he jumps in more, he's more a bit aggressive defending, which on one side can be good, but it's easy to get
Also, I
torched.
think that's part of his DNA in
Right.
terms of where he comes from, right? Like he comes from a
Yeah.
German, very physical, robust type of league, whereas Carreras has kind of been kicked around, but he's in La Liga, probably more. He seems more of like a finesse player to me than Best.
Yeah. And he Best just looks like
I was just gonna say Best is
freaking-
German, but he looks like, you know, if you gave him a Norwegian flag or a Danish flag, you wouldn't be like, you'd be like, he's definitely a Viking.
Yeah, 100%.
I saw a video. I saw
the
a picture
braids
today of him in training, and the comment was like, "I should be out fishing and getting fish for my family, but instead I'm here kicking a soccer ball around."
I saw that. Yeah,
that's literally like the explanation of Best at this moment. Yeah, I agree. I don't know if we've seen enough of him, but I think from what I've seen, I think he's a different profile than Carreras. I think Carreras, like I said, is more finesse, more of a guy that maybe, you know, fits into the mold more of like, we always have the ball, we're always in our half. He doesn't have to kind of recover as many times. He's got tidier feet, can get out of tight spaces. Whereas Best is more of a guy like north to south. He's going to get up and down that line. He's going to, you know, push people off the ball. He's going to swing crosses in. More of a guy that is going to give you more options if it's more of an open game, or if it's, you know, if you're going to have to stop counterattacks or stuff like that. So I think it's good that we have 2, in my opinion, 2 different profiles of left backs, right? It gives you a few more options, opposed if you have like the same type of player, right? It's basically just, okay, when you make a change, it's difficult to alter the system or the approach, right? Because it's basically a copy and paste. So it's interesting to see, you know, this type of player at Benfica, and hopefully, again, another 25-year-old young player, which hopefully is one for the future. Leandro Barreiro, again from Mainz, center midfielder, can play a 6, can play an 8. Seems a box-to-box 24-year-old from Luxembourg, Portuguese heritage. What have you thought of him?
I've liked him. I thought, I liked the deal, right? Like being able to pick up a player of his caliber on a free, right? Like
We don't do that often.
No, like that's like smart business, right? And I think like transfer market has this value at like 16 or 17 mil. Like to be able to pull a transfer like that off for free for a player of his quality and caliber, I think was smart business. I mean, he fits into that like him and Tino to me are very, very similar. I think he might be a little quicker than Tino. Tino's not as quick.
And he's got,
but
I feel like his ability to cover ground is a little bit better.
Yeah. But I mean, Tino makes up for it because he seems to read the game.
He reads the game well.
A bit better. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, Barreto coming from the German league, right? Like he's in that middle where he's going to be a physical player. And I think I don't love having him and Tino both playing at the same time. I think they're too much of like, they're very similar. And we kind of lose some creativity going forward because both those guys seem to be very side to side with possession, not kind of trying to find that pass in behind. Passers. Right. And it's not them, right? It's not their traits. But I think there's going to be games this season where we're going to need that heaviness in the midfield, the strength to be able to just win a ball and hold it and keep it, because both of them are very good at keeping possession, right? And Tino, I mean, I gave him credit at the end of last season. I think he improved tremendously with his decision making around the ball. Like he stopped trying to make those Enzo style balls that we would say, right? Like those 60, 70-yard balls. He kept it simple, short, and moved it quick. And Barreto seems, again, in the same mold where he wins it and tries to get rid of it quick. He's not one to hold on to the ball too long. And I think the pairing together could be very useful in certain games. But as a signing, again, like to be able to get a player like that can easily start, like you can slide him into the starting 11, no problem, on a free. Like I can't really complain about that deal at all.
Yeah, and he's also like, Tino's not a guy that's going to transport the ball through the midfield, right? You don't want him running with the ball at his feet.
Right.
Barreto, I saw a couple of situations against Feyenoord at home where we came out short play out of the back, and he was able to beat a defender, drop a shoulder, or beat a player from the opposing team, drop a shoulder, and transport the ball 10 yards with the ball at his feet and able to play out. So having that capability, I think, is important. But I think we've talked about it in our group chat, right? Where I think the two of them together, we lack creativity between the two, but the two of them together also gives us an incredible amount of capabilities to just absolutely suffocate opponents in their defensive third. Now, with the caveat that, and we saw it against Fulham, which was the goal that we concede, is yes, they give us the ability to press high. It gives us a little bit more stability from a defensive perspective. Reaction to losing the ball is fantastic, but the two of them together have to know when and how to stop the game, right? Against Fulham, we got beat mainly in the first half. We struggled a little bit in terms of Fulham was able to break that first line of pressure, and then they were running 20 yards unopposed, right? And the goal comes from Tino and Barreto both press the guy with the ball. He turns on them, and then they're dead, right? And now they're basically chasing shadows, and then the goal ends up coming from that, right? So in that situation, one of them has to be intelligent enough to stop that play there, right? Like you can't let that guy turn at the edge of his box and run 40 yards with the ball.
Yeah, we saw it last year too, right? Like there was a bunch of situations where you felt like, we call them professional fouls, right? Like you just foul to kind of stop the counter or stop, and
teams do it against us,
and we don't, but it's a constant. Like it's been a few years that we are like, I don't know if it's like afraid to make that foul to get maybe a silly yellow card. No, I won't say silly because you're stopping a potential dangerous counterattack, but like we tend to shy away from making those tackles or just pulling a guy back just to take the foul and settle and reset. And
unfortunately, one of those situations could be the difference between conceding a goal
100%.
and not, right? And like that full game was the perfect example where second half we made adjustments and we basically suffocated them and couldn't find the back of the net, right? Fulham couldn't get out. And that one chance where if we stop them, right, they don't score that goal, and then the game's completely different, right? So like that one moment could be a huge difference. And I get it, right? Like you don't want your center mids to be impacted by a yellow card early on in the game, especially in the Portuguese league. But unfortunately, we need to let the referees make those decisions, right? Like we can't play in fear of like, shit, I'm going to be conditioned because I have a yellow card, right? Like, cool. I'd rather be conditioned with a yellow card and not put my team in a situation where we concede a goal versus I'm not going to foul him because I don't want a yellow card, but instead he's going to run 40 yards and we're going to concede a goal, right? Like I'll take the yellow card every time. We've got players on the bench if we need to make adjustments.
Just about to say that we have the squad depth, right? Where if someone picks up a stupid early yellow, not I won't say stupid, but if they pick up an early yellow card, we have the squad depth to be able to pull them out at half or whatever and be able to make it the change.
Yeah, I agree. I think the two of them together, I think, are good. They don't offer creativity, but they offer something else that gives the team a little bit more stability. But I would say the only caveat between the two of them is we need to absolutely figure out how to be better with those tactical fouls, how to stop the play, when to stop the play. Because if those two can figure that out, it's going to be very few and far between that we get hit on a counterattack because of their ability to just, one, read the game, two, to recover. Like the two of them are super good in terms of closing down space, pressing hard. And if they can figure out that ability to stop those plays early, it's going to be really hard for teams to catch us on the break. But let's see if they can mature and find that in their locker to help us. And then the elephant in the room, Renato Sanchez, 26 years old, on loan from PSG. That's 3 years in a row that we've had a loanee from PSG. Julian Draxler.
Hopefully the third year.
Well, and when I say we, the medical room has had loanees from PSG, not necessarily the starting 11. Renato returns home as part of the deal of João Neves to PSG. Again, 26 years old. He left after one season with Benfica. He has a market value of 6.5 according to Transfer Market. It hasn't been official yet, but there's lots of rumors circulating that Benfica has an option to buy of 10 million euros. And I want to separate the conversations here. So I'm sure they'll end up kind of navigating. I guess let's put them together because with this, we can kind of go into the João Neves departure. I'll start with this one. I think Renato coming back, right? Like if he can stay healthy, I think in form and healthy, he's probably an automatic on the starting 11. I would be willing to say, right? Like he's caliber of player, what he can bring to the table. Again, we talk about Barreiro and Tino in terms of intensity and being physical. I mean, he's got intensity. He's got physicality.
Yeah, it's just a different level of it.
Right. So, I mean, and he's got experience, right? He's been seasoned. He was at Bayern. He was at Lille. He was at Roma, at PSG, right? So, like, he's been around the block, even though he's only 26 years old. So he brings a different maturity to the team. Question is, obviously, can he stay fit? With that said, if he stays fit, if the rumors are true in terms of 10 million, I mean, for me, in my opinion, that's an absolute steal. Steal,
100%.
Because if he stays fit and is in form, in my opinion, if say he plays 2 seasons at Benfica, right? He's on loan this year. We buy him next year. I would be willing to bet that if he stays fit and plays regularly and is in form, Benfica can easily double or triple that again.
Yeah.
In 2-3 years, because again, he's only 26 years old, right? I think his only problem is he hasn't been able to stay healthy.
He hasn't been fit. And I saw someone today I forget what one of the Portuguese footy shows, I forget which one it was, but they were talking about it. It was a clip that he said, like, if he's fit and healthy, he's a national team quality player. Like, simple. And like if Benfica, if he's fit and healthy, which is the big if with him, it's a great, at 10 mil, it's a great deal. Even if it's a player that you're bringing back to keep, like you're not looking to, like, that's a player that if he can stay fit and healthy, that you could have at the club for 5-6 years and he can anchor that midfield with Tino or with Pereiro or with whoever. Like he's a player of huge quality and huge potential. The problem with him was always fitness. It was never the quality of the player. It was where we've seen with other players that have left Benfica, where it's been the quality of their play and how they've handled adversity and stuff. With Renato, that's never been the question. The question has always been, can he fucking stay healthy? Like he's always been hurt. The one or two seasons he wasn't hurt, he was at Lille,
like
and
he played up.
They won the league.
Mind. Yeah,
they fucking won the league. Yeah. The quality of him, the quality of the player, is by far more than 10 mil. I love seeing him come back. I hate the deal it was attached to. I like the fact that he's coming back. I like that we're looking at bringing back players. I love that. And I mean, I think the risk reward is low to me, right? Like
correct.
We have a ton of players that can play in that midfield and can play elsewhere on the field. So it's not a player that we need to have ready to go on day one. But if he's fit and he's ready and he's 100% and can stay healthy, he's a player that's going to impact the season in a huge way. So to me, I mean, it's low risk, high reward, and with that option to buy, if it's true, what the reports have been at 10, I think it's a bargain. Now on the flip side of it, with João Neves having to leave for him to be able to come in, to me, I hate it. I don't like the João Neves deal one bit. The price, the player, like to me, it raises concerns with the financials of the club, right? Like a player of that age, that quality, with the price tag that we had on his release clause, and what feels like we're forced to kind of sell him because we weren't able to sell off our other pieces to be able to bring in some type of money. That's the concerning part to me, where we just went off of a season where we struggled in the season, but we made it to Champions League. This year we have the Champions League money is supposed to be the record high, right? Whole new format. 2 seasons ago, we had record financials from, right? Like there's like, you see all this money coming in from Champions League, the Club World Cup, and then like, it's not like we haven't sold players in the past for shit tons of money, but yet it feels like this transfer, we were kind of forced to sell. Because from my standpoint, like he didn't want to leave. And we've seen. I mean, we saw Tony's brother's post. I think most people have probably seen it.
Yeah.
Right. That blatantly said like he was kind of forced out of the club, and Cedric, I forget what show he was on. I think it was on 11, maybe.
Canals, yeah.
Canals. He was talking about how. I mean, he kind of hinted at it where some clubs are forcing players out, right? And that was like either the day before or the day after the transfer was announced, or was like actually like moved, right? So like this just feels like financially we were kind of forced to, and I understand we need to sell, right? But like the fact that we couldn't hold on to him and wait and see if we could offload other pieces.
Well, that's the piece that's important for people to understand here. So quickly, just SLB, yes, welcome back to a new season. He says, hello, gents, it's quiet in here. First podcast, season hasn't started yet. People are still on vacation. So I'm not surprised, but hopefully we got some people watching it back or listening to it back. We actually have quite a few people that are actually tuning in live, just maybe shy to leave their comments. So if you are tuning in, let us know where you're watching from. If you're new here, if you're not, again, be sure to hit like, subscribe, share. We appreciate all of you guys. SLBS also says an informed 18-19 Donato is twice the player of Neves. Not sure we'll ever see it, but he's only 26, so you never know. Maybe he'll be like Simão coming back from Barca. So, what he says here, 18-19 Donato is twice the player of Neves. and again, it's going to generate a lot of controversy. I said it last year, and I got a little bit of criticism and stick for it. João Neves is a fantastic player, right? Like, we can't say otherwise. I think he has a bright future ahead of him. But I said it last year, and if it's not like I'm pulling it out of the air now. João Neves, a lot of times last year, unbalanced the team because of his need and desire to be involved in every single play, right? And that's not a knock to him, right? That's just a maturity thing, right? I mean, he's super young. He's from the club, coming through the youth. He had a rocky year from an emotional perspective, right? So soccer was his escape to some extent. And when you feel the club with that much passion, right, you're probably more inclined to kind of really dig your feet in and want to turn things around. And I think because of Benfica's form and the way the season went, maybe he felt like he needed to kind of take that initiative. And again, I felt, and I said it last year a few times, that for as great as he was, for as much as he did, there were times where I felt like he unbalanced the team a bit. With that said, an informed Renato, I don't think anyone can disagree that the two of them in form today, I think Renato is a better all-around player than João Neves, naturally, because he's 26 years old. He's been around the block, right? Like, that's, for me, that's not a discussion, right? Again, the big question mark is, can he stay fit? In terms of the deal, right? And now we're kind of transitioning out to the departures. And just quickly, Gary B says, watching from California, nice and early over there, 6:00. He should have been allowed to stay another year. In terms of the deal, and there's been a lot of things that have been said online, and I think that maybe some people aren't necessarily apprised of the things that go into the deal and the conversations and what we need to and don't need to do. So I'm going to separate it in kind of two pieces here. From a management perspective of our finances and our purchases, I don't disagree in terms of, right, like, I think there's a lot of question marks to be had in terms of, like, we've generated a lot of money. We're in Champions League again, right? Like, what would have happened if we hadn't made Champions League? Right. What would have happened if, we didn't get that fortune of, I already forgot, like, what ended up getting us, because Leverkusen lost in the final. It was Atlanta that ended up being in the top 3 in Serie A, that ended up pushing us over the bump into direct qualification, right? Yep. Obviously, we would have still been able to, go through the qualification, but going direct gives you a little bit more bump from a financial perspective and gives you more guaranteed money. What would have happened had we not achieved that, right? Like, what the hell would have our finances looked at that point? With that said, right, so, like, I think there's valid questions that need to be asked in terms of, like, what the hell is happening to this money and why are we in a difficult situation like this? In terms of the selling, right, Benfica essentially has to sell 50 to 60 million worth, given our current model, to be able to sustain everything, right? Our cost of, just running the club is high. Player salaries are higher, right? We've kind of shrunk our player list, right? But the salaries have increased, right? So while we've got less players, we've got higher salaries. So it didn't change too much. But the thing is that 50 or 60 has to be what they call a mais-valia, right? So, like, had we sold Kokshu, Artur Cabral, Tankstead, right? Like, that 50, 60 would have had to be a mais-valia. So Kokshu was 25, Artur Cabral was 20. If we sold them for 50, right, that's essentially only 5 million mais-valia. Yeah. That's only a profit, right, based on what we bought them for versus what we're selling, right? So that's from my understanding and conversations that I've had with people that are close to the financial situation of the club. So with João Neves, the 60 plus 10, or almost 60, is 59 and change. So 60 plus 10 is all profit, right? Because he's from the youth, right? So that was basically that sell that we had to make. And he said in his interview, right, like, we waited as long as we could. And I think the waiting was because of is there any interest in anyone else that we could potentially get our way through this and not have to sell him? But I think we're in August, the season's about to start. I think basically they were up against the gun, and it's like, listen, like the longer we wait, we're probably going to get less of an offer for you. Right. So like, do we pull the trigger now? Do I think João Neves wanted to stay another year? 100%. Right. But based on his conversation, I feel like he also understood the situation Benfica was in, and the situation he was walking into from a financial perspective was also beneficial to him. Right. So while he may have not wanted to leave, I think he also understood, and given his connection with the club, he understood like, all right, there's probably no other options other than me right now. So I'm going to basically take the hit for the club. Right. And when I say take the hit, right, yes, he's leaving Benfica, the club that he loves, at a young age, but he's also going to make 5x what he's making in Paris with different living conditions and different exposure. Right. So it's not like he's losing in a sense.
Right.
And then the other piece that I wanted to touch on quickly is the 10% intermediary that people are, setting their hair on fire about. Benfica had to pay the 10% of the intermediary cost, which is basically the Judgment's fee, right? So we paid Judgment's 10% of the fixed cost, which is the 59 and change. So basically 6 million of the money that we're getting from PSG goes to Judgment's. The reason for that, and people are crazy, like, why are we paying if we didn't want to sell him? All of those costs are included in the contract already. So when João Neves renewed his contract a year ago, that percentage was already agreed to in the agreement, right? So it had nothing to do with today, in the moment. It had nothing to do with that. That was unfortunately already in there. Now people are saying, why would we agree to that? And I'm going to turn it around and ask Benfica fans, for those of you that are watching and listening, had Rui Costa come out last year and said, unfortunately, we weren't able to reach an agreement with João Neves. We weren't able to renew his contract because his agent wants to add the 10% sell-on fee into his contract, and we don't agree to that, so we're not going to renew his contract. Would Benfica fans applaud that and be like, absolutely, well done, we don't want to pay that 10%? Of course they wouldn't.
Out with the pitchforks and torches.
Exactly. Right. It sucks. Unfortunately, the negotiation of soccer and transfers has become just an absolute negotiation and a business, and these agents are making a killing, and it's beneficial for the agents, for their players to move on and be sold because they get a cut, especially Josh Mins, right? Like he's essentially monopolized
cut of
the business.
Everything. Yeah.
But let's understand a little bit of like what goes into this. That percentage was already in his renewal. It had nothing to do with Benfica was desperate to sell him and we had to pay him, because that has nothing to do with it, right? So like, we can be annoyed that he left. I'm annoyed. I'm frustrated that he left. But given the context and the situation, I get it. And just to close off here, people complaining like João Neves' sale for 60 plus 10 is the worst business Benfica has done in the history of our club. Julian Alvarez, who just came from the Premier League, has won everything there is to win at a club level, international level. Young star. He just went to Atletico Madrid for 75 plus 20. 75 plus 20. Okay, 75 fixed price. João Neves went for 60 fixed plus 10 bonus. He went for 75 plus 20. He's coming from the best league in the world. He's got a locker room full of titles at a young age. He's played with the elites, right? And if he's going for 75 plus 20 and we got 60 plus 10 in today's market,
market shifting. Yeah.
I think, right. Like, I think his sale to Atletico maybe opens our eyes a little bit of like, is João Neves better than Julian Alvarez? No, I don't think so. And I don't think anyone that's being honest with themselves can say he's anywhere close to him. Julian Alvarez is international. João Neves hasn't played. What did he play?
Yeah.
Did he play in the year? I don't even remember.
Yeah.
A few minutes?
Yeah.
The third game, right?
Third game.
Yeah. So, right, like Julian Alvarez has been on the national team. He plays regularly for Manchester City. He's won titles. He's won the World Cup. He's won the Premier League, right? Like, he's won a lot of stuff, right? So, I mean, when we contextualize this and look at it a little bit, like, maybe the market price that we got for João Neves isn't what we would have wanted to because of the release clause, which is just a farce, right? That's just a protection for the club. I think it maybe opens our eyes and says, maybe it wasn't that bad of a deal. Numbers wise, you could be mad that he left. I don't disagree with that. But in terms of what we got back, I don't think it's the worst deal. Let me just run through quickly these comments. Mycon, my man, how's life in Charlotte? Just waiting to see what you guys are going to say about Marcos Leonardo. We'll give him a word. I know Brazzi fan, you're going to want to hear about him. We're a sleeping giant because of terrible management. I agree. I think there's question marks in terms of management and how we've managed things financially over the last
100%.
2 decades, maybe. Why not sell Antonio Silva? I wouldn't be surprised, and I'll ask you this, Bill. I already said in our group chat, I wouldn't be surprised if we get an 11th hour transfer request for Antonio Silva from someone, on the last day of the transfer window. But why not sell him? I don't think we have enough interest right now that we would have been able to sell him and keep João Neves.
I had seen reports that before like the whole PSG stuff came up, that was the plan. The plan was to
and there was rumors Manchester United was interested.
Right.
But
it was
rumors and concrete offers are two different things.
Right, exactly. It was to sell Antonio to keep João Neves. And again, when you look at the squad and the depth we have, you could do either because we do have depth on both sides of things, right? It's just the market kind of dictates where you can go with it and what you can do because I mean, outside of the Man U reports early in the window, like as soon as last season ended, outside of that, like we didn't see anything else about anyone interested.
And he didn't have a great season.
I was just about to say he had a down year. Like he had a bad year. João Neves was easily the star of the team last year. So,
but had Benfica had a good overall season, would João Neves have stuck out as much? Right, that's a question that I ask myself consistently.
I think he would have just because his.
But would it have been as obvious if we had a team that was like if Auschwitz was playing further up, right?
Yeah.
If we had a team that was really all on the same page and there was fluidity there, would he? Yes, I think he would have stood out, but would he have had as much of an impact as he did?
Probably not, because his role would have been like the role in the team would have been completely different. Like we saw it when he came up that first. The second half of that first year with him, right? The half season, right? Like his role wasn't to carry the game. His role was win it or get it, carry it a bit, and move it quick. And I mean, he did it well, but I think that would have been if the team was performing the way we performed that first season. I think that would have been more of his role in the team, where it wouldn't have been you need to carry the game, right? You need to dictate everything, which he was doing for us. I don't think that would have been his role, and I agree. I don't think he would have stood out as much. Do I think he would have had a great season? Yeah, definitely. I mean, the quality of the player, I think, would have come out eventually in games and moments. But yeah, I don't think he would have been as glaring as it was last year.
I agree. SLBS says Neves was a solid player, but he didn't have the ability to score. Reason Enzo went for 120 million. He's gone for 70 million. I'd like to have kept him, but I think Rafa's goals will be missed more. I agree. I think Neves is going to be missed probably more for his passion and his connection to the club, more than what he gave us on the field. And I'm saying this hoping that Benfica has put together a good squad where we don't miss his quality. Right. Again, I'm not putting in debate. I'm not saying that he's not good. Right. I'm not putting that out there. We've already said that he's a great player, fantastic player. He has his weaknesses. He's young. He's going to improve. He's going to mature. But I agree with the statement in the sense of if you look at both, I think we're going to miss Rafa's goals and missed opportunities, maybe more than João Neves, hoping that the team we have today is going to be able to compete well. And I think the comparison with Enzo and João Neves, I can see it and I don't see it. Enzo's benefit, when we said it before just quickly, is he came to Benfica coming off of he was in mid-season form, right? Where everyone else was just getting their legs underneath him, right? So that was a benefit for him. And then I think the World Cup also helped him. Once he got into the lineup, he really stuck himself in there and he didn't come out. but I think he's an absolutely completely different type of player of João Neves, right? Like
Yeah.
Enzo's a guy that reads the game well. You don't see him doing sprints, right? João Neves is a guy that's going to cut the ball back in the corner flag and he's going to try to take 2-3 guys on. Enzo's a guy that's going to get the ball, pick his head up, and just knock it.
Enzo to me is more of like that Pirlo mold, right? Like he's not
Correct.
He's not bombing all over the
Visionary.
field. Like he's going to get the ball and he's
Absolutely.
going to ping it all over the field and he can score worldies. But he's
Yeah.
not a player that's going to play with the energy that João Neves does. Like it's a different
he's
style.
not going to exert himself because he's going to read the game better. He's got ability to, instead of having to run 15 yards and then play that ball, I can play that ball from here and on a rope and it's going to get there.
Yeah.
So much different type of player, but I can understand the comparison. Enzo has goals in him. João Neves at the moment doesn't. He finds himself in good spots. He picked up some decent and important goals for us this last season. But again, that could come with time. That comes with the team, right? He might find himself in goal scoring opportunities more at PSG than he did at Benfica just because of the team behind him, around him, right? So things can change there. Diego Petu, during the transfer window, there were no interesting offers for the club or for Antonio. Exactly right, like what we had talked about. I don't think there was, but it could have also been other clubs thinking, let's wait, right? There's a lot of rumors surfacing about João Neves. Let's wait for them to offload him, right? And then maybe we find our opportunity to come in for Antonio. Maybe we'll get a better deal. From my perspective, the sale of João Neves was fantastic for both Benfica and João Neves himself. There's no point in lamenting players who leave. I agree. I think we touched on that, but again, it's frustrating because he's from the youth, but Benfica fans have this like sick, we've talked about it before, they have like this sick obsession with players from, it's like a blind love for players.
We love them. Regardless if they're good or bad, we love them.
Yeah. It's like the man behind the curtain and like, you don't even know what they look like, or like the female behind the curtain, you don't know what she looks like and you're on a blind date, but it's like, oh, I'm from the Seychelles. You're like, oh, I'm in love. I don't care what you look like. I don't care what you sound like, but I'm in love.
Yeah.
Another João Neves will emerge. Trust me, next year no one remembers João. We'll have Cristiani and other talents making their mark. I hope so. We got the likes of Rollheiser, Cristiani's, Marcos Leonardo. I want to give Mike on a quick shout out. Marcos Leonardo, quickly.
Huge potential.
I'll start and then I think getting Marcos Leonardo was a steal because we talked about it quickly last year of Santos getting relegated and them needing to sell and make some money, and I think, and I said it last year, I think it was more of an opportunity from a investment perspective for Benfica of, right, like this is a young product. The ability to turn this around financially, I think, is a huge piece here. So let's go get him. He came in last season and he scored pure poacher's goals in terms of like, he just found himself in the right spots at the right time.
Came in on fire.
People, again, we're ranting and raving like, oh my God, this guy is amazing. He needs to start, right? And it's just like, let's pump the brakes, right? Like he's finding himself in the right spots, but like he looks leggy, he looks tired, right? He's going to have to adapt himself. Now, with that said, in this preseason, I think we can make an argument for the fact that he seemed to be the player that had the best chemistry with Pavlidis in the games that they played together. Would you agree?
100%. And that's what shocked me right from the go, right? Like that very first game, him in that 10 role, right? The second striker. Like I was not expecting to see him there, and their chemistry, him and Pavlidis, clicked right off the bat, and both finding the back of the net, both playing well. I mean, the talent's there. Goal scoring ability, we saw it last year, is there. Like he's a pure goal scorer. Now it's just finding. And I mean, we talked about it last year. We weren't sure if he was a type of player to be a lone striker or if he had to play off of a striker. And we're seeing it this year.
And at Santos, and Mike can correct me. Santos, I believe from what I read and what I saw, he played as a second striker, not as a lone striker.
Yeah, and
I think seeing his connection with Pavlidis playing behind him, like his ability to link up play, his ability to turn on the ball, play with his back to goal, like has really stood out. Yeah. And I think he could be a huge asset for us in that kind of number false 9 role behind the striker.
100%.
But Maicon says here he's nasty. He stuck out. He played for a very, very bad Santos team and stuck out. Yeah. And he said, yes, he played as a free role. Yeah. So he wasn't he wasn't your spearhead of your attack. He was a guy kind of floating around. And I think now that we've seen him in that position in this preseason with a pure striker that is mobile and can link up, and Pavlidis can play better with his back to goal and turn and get into those spaces where Artur struggles with that a bit. I think we're now really starting to see a little bit of like what the Marcos Leonardo is and that hype that was around him when he came to Benfica, and what Santos fans were upset to see leave.
Yeah, I agree. And you touched on it, the again, savvy business, right? Like kind of taking advantage of Santos' situation, right? Getting them for, 18 mil. When you see the other guys that he's been compared with, right? The other Brazilian strikers that are leaving, like those guys are leaving for 50, 60, 70 mil, and we're getting this guy for 18. Like it's a bargain of a deal. And last year he struggled a bit, but I think early signs this year playing that 10 role or free second striker, whatever you want to call it. I think he's shown huge signs of potential.
Yeah, and there's been already comparisons to Jonas and Mitroglou with Marcos Leonardo and Pavlidis.
Love it.
Let's hope we can replicate that.
That would be fantastic. Those first two were pretty good.
Maicon, how many goals do you think he's going to score for us this season? He says he's going to take over Lucas Paquetá on the national team. Is he going to take over for Paquetá because of his quality, or because Paquetá is going to get suspended for betting on yellow cards that he's going to get? Yeah, how many yellow cards he's going to get himself in a game. Let us know how many goals you think he'll score, and we'll write that down, see if you're accurate in all competitions. Edwindo da Moura, boa noite, amigos. Abraço desde Palm Coast. Abraço para si, Edwindo. E obrigado por mais uma vez participar aqui neste nosso podcast. Serge says he's watching from Vancouver, north of the border. Thank you, Serge. Welcome. If this is your first time, if it's not your first time, welcome back. Gary B says, do you think Cristiano will be a starter? We'll talk about that when we show our lineups after for the Famalicão game, but I think most of us have him starting, maybe with the exception of one. Águia do Norte, Águia Pedro says, yes, I think he'll eventually secure a starting position. He's a prodigy. At 16, he established himself in Vela's first team, obviously in regards to Cristiani. The Águia Pedro also says, absolutely agree, Mike. For us, everything coming from Seychelles is gold, even if it later turns out to be brass. I mean, we talk about this every year. We can rattle off players that had so much hype coming from the Seychelles, and probably 90% of fans can't tell you where the hell they're playing right now, or if they're still playing right now. I get it, right? Like, you want to be connected to that guy that came from your club. He's youth, you kind of almost live vicariously through him, right? Like, that's what I wanted to be, right? We were all the kid kicking the ball around in our driveway, pretending that we were, at that time, the João Pintos of the world and the Vitor Pinedas of the world, depending on how old you are. Right? We all want to be those guys that came up, living and breathing Benfica, and we want to live vicariously through them, those same players that go through that trajectory. But the reality is like, you're not going to find a gem every single year, right? Not every player is going to be, the Messis of the world and the Ronaldos of the world. Like, those are few and far between, right? If you can get players from your academy that are selling for 40, 50, even 60 million, every other year, like, that's really good, right? Like, there's not many academies that are shipping players like that, right? Gary says Nelson Oliveira. He was on the tip of my tongue. I feel like I always mention him first, so I felt bad. I didn't want to say his name, but I'm glad someone else is saying it, right? So I get it.
And the one he mentioned before, I'll never forget. And I think me and you both agreed when Ferro and Ruben Diaz, we were both like, oh, Ferro's going to be the better player. Dude, how fucking bad of a take that was. Holy shit.
Estrela Amadora with Nani. SLB says, are you sad that Neves was sold or that Koksu wasn't? Bill,
I like Koksu. I just
give me your answer. I'm just going to grab my water, but I'm listening.
Probably I'm sadder than Neves was sold because I'm fine that we didn't sell Koksu, right? I think we saw at the end of last season Koksu in the right position without having all that defensive responsibilities. I think can be a quality player, and I think, and we saw it at the end of last season, right? When he was put in that role of the Rafa role, right at the end, we saw him kind of stand out, and we saw the player that we hoped to see when he fucking signed for 25 mil. Problem is now we've had Marcos Leonardo stand out in that position. We had Cristiani stand out in that position, right? And unfortunately, I think going to the Euro may have hurt him a bit to start the season, because I think to start the season he's not going to start at 10. I think we could end up seeing, like we saw with, who was it, Ba? I think Ba and Gilberto, right? Like Gilberto started the season, but Ba eventually took over. I think we see something like that eventually. I think Koksu ends up being the regular at that 10, but I mean, I'm fine keeping Koksu. I think, and I think I've chatted about this in our group text. Like I'm interested to see if he's willing to try like a Tino Obredo with Koksu and Prestiani, like a very attacking minded midfield, right? Especially with Freddie out wide, you have the defensive cover that we didn't really see, because last year I don't think Koksu ever played with Tino in the midfield. I'm trying to remember back. If he did, it was very far and few between.
I think he
It
did.
was far and few between, and we didn't have Freddie
on a regular till the end of the season. So.
Right, and we didn't have Freddie on the left. Right, I think having Freddie on the left, because he comes in defensively, covers so much ground,
huge difference.
that I think if Roger's willing to go high offensive talent and creativity, you could go with a Tino or Barreiros alongside Koksu with a Cristiani or Marcus Leonardo in that 10 role, and then you're getting tons of creativity, and you have the defensive help from Freddie that's going to cover for Koksu, who's, I mean, he's a 10, right? He doesn't want to do the defensive work, but if you have a guy that's covering for him and will put in that work, I mean, I think you have the ability to do that, and especially in the Portuguese league, right? Like 90% of our games, it's going to be low blocks. You're going to have 10 guys behind the ball. Like, you're going to have creative guys in there, and you can take the risk and play 3 or 4 creative guys in your front 4 or 5, because you're going to have the ball for 90% of the time. So,
and he's got. And we had talked about it against Fulham. He came in pretty well. Like his first couple of touches, he was finding himself in space between lines. He almost
scored.
I said it before he's joined. I think if he's in form, if his head's on right, if the team around him is built properly, I think he's easily got the locker room and the talent to be able to be one of the best players in the Portuguese league. Right? He was voted best player in the Dutch league. There's no reason why he can't do the same thing in Portugal. Now, obviously, he needs certain players, need certain conditions, and need to be put in the right context to be able to flourish and bring out the best of their abilities. I think that with the team that we have, I think he has the ability to, or has the conditions to be able to stand out. But again, right, like you got the Prestianis, you got the Rollheisers, you got the Barreiros, the Tinus, João Mario can play there, right? So like there's a lot of contention here. I will go out on a limb here and say, and I hope I'm wrong, but I do think that if there is an offer, and it sounds like Zenit is after him, I do think if Benfica gets an offer that's decent, I wouldn't be surprised if they potentially explore the opportunity to be able to offload him because of the options that we have. Some of those options are young, right? And they're assets that we could potentially, skyrocket to the moon from a financial perspective this season, depending on if everything goes well. But I would be sad to see him go, because I really think he's a really good player. And I think that if he does leave, we will look back and say, you know what? That guy could have really helped us, right? But unfortunately, he wasn't able to show his quality while he was here. And again, we have plenty of situations like that where they leave and go be good somewhere else, right? Because again, the context is different, the situation around them is different, and that's fine. But I'm still hopeful that he's going to be able to show us the real quality that he did in the Netherlands. P.S. Cristiani's playing behind the striker reminds me of Saviola. Yeah, like tricky little fucker. Like he's literally just like
another one, like
weaving in and out. Like
there's been, and we talked about the preseason, right? Like there's been a handful of guys that came in and like just stood out from the start. I think Paredes, I think, was one. I think he looked very good in all preseason so far. Cristiani, Marcus Leonardo, and then obviously
Rollheiser got screwed with
our Greek
the
freak
injury.
up top. Rollheiser, I mean, the injury probably came at the worst moment because he was catching traction. But I mean, we've had guys just step up. And I mean, Cristiani to me was the one where I think we all were like, yeah, he's young, loan him out, let him get experience, and then come
Yeah,
back.
I was one of them.
And this fucking kid
But he took his
came
chance,
in,
right?
got
And like
a
that's
few minutes,
important. You
took
take
it,
the
and
chance.
grabbed it. And to me, I don't think to start the season, he's not letting go of that chance.
No, and that's good, right?
I mean,
Like, and especially at that age, right? Like, I think it just shows
so
a
fucking young.
mentality that's incredible. I'm going to ask a question to those of you that are tuning in or listening after the fact as well. And as I run through more of these comments, do you guys think, right? There was a lot of hype with Sheldrup coming back. He had a good year at Nordsjælland. Unfortunately, he got screwed because of a stupid tackle in the first preseason game or the second preseason game against, was it Almeria? Like in the 90th minute or something like that. Like,
was it Almeria or Celta Vigo?
Maybe it was Celta Vigo. I know it was maybe the second or third game, but it was like an absolutely stupid tackle. Prior to that game, he hadn't stood out in the previous performances, but again, he's coming to a different reality. But there was a lot of hype around him. Do you guys think that with the injury and with some of the other guys that are starting to stick out, how does that play into his potential future at the club, right? Like, is it another potential loan move, or do we stick with him, right, and kind of ride the waves and the ups and downs of, like, right, Cristiani's not going to play at this level the whole season, right, and he's going to die off, right? Then do we ride, hopefully, the Sheldrup wave, right, and kind of keep going back and forth? But curious to see what those of you who are in the comments watching now or after the fact or listening after the fact think about him. So let us know your thoughts. Micon says, in all competitions, I really feel like he's a 25, 28 goal scorer, and that's in terms of Marcos Leonardo. I'll take that, man. If he can get us that many goals, I don't think he's going to be a regular starter. But if he can give us that many goals, if he can give us that many goals as not a regular starter, because I don't think he will be a regular starter, that's a good sign for Benfica. If he's bagging that many goals. Marcos Cristiani and Rollheiser will be an interesting fight for the spot. Looking forward to it. I agree. I think we got a lot of talent there. Gary said, Ferro, Nelson Oliveira. Of course, there's a sense of belonging with all the players who are developing in our house. Don't mock Ferro. He's got talent. Just got to get his shit together. He'll be a late bloomer. I don't know, man. I think his train already passed.
Yeah, it's gone.
I mean, he's still young, right? There's still an opportunity, but I think his train.
I do agree. I think his issue was always
mental. I don't disagree with that.
Playing ability, he was on very good.
No, I agree. I believe Rollheiser will establish himself in midfield as an 8, somewhat like his compatriot Enzo Perez. I think he will have another diamond there. Yeah, and there's a lot of Enzo Perez. That's what I was gonna say. I thought I read that as Fernandez by mistake. Yeah. I mean, if he can replicate Enzo Perez, I mean, when he came back to Benfica, he was just an absolute tank. And I remember reading interviews of him on how JJ like coached him and sat down with him and like showed him how he wanted to play that role, because that wasn't his natural role.
He was a winger,
and like how he struggled to adapt. And then when you look back and like think about the seasons that he had in that position, you're like, fuck, how did he struggle to adapt? The guy was an absolute machine.
Unbelievable.
Gary says got to play that high press. This will be, yes, Tino and Pereira were played together a lot. Wonder if we're going back to a 2 defensive mid. I think we'll start the season like that. Again, because I think it gives Roger Schmidt that comfort and stability from a defensive perspective, which is situations that we ran into last year that maybe weren't there.
It allows us to press, right?
Correct.
Like the two of them allow us to be able to press right off the fucking bat.
Correct. Opposed to playing like the João Marius by himself in the midfield, right, where you don't have the ability to press. He doesn't have the recovery pace. Right. We had João Neves there last year, but again, like it's very, the occupancy of space, the awareness of positional awareness wasn't there because of the maturity, right? So like I think the two of them together give us that foundation, and then we can mix and match.
Yeah. I also think it's kind of, yes, they start like the first preseason game, it was them together. But I also think it like Rollheiser got hurt. So like we weren't able to see another we didn't have like Koksu wasn't back yet. Jean-Marie was the only other option in the midfield. Like guys weren't readily available to be able to change it up a bit. And you have to, like from Roger's standpoint, he needs to build the team to get ready for game 1, right? Fade-ins. Famalicão. Yeah. So like he had to build with what was available, and now guys are coming back, but I think to start we'll probably see the two defensive mids, but I think eventually we'll move away from it. And I mean the quality and depth we have there, I think gives us the ability to play the double pivot or play one guy there or play neither of them and go super fucking all out attacking.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that center mid role is the position that he probably moved the most in last year. So we'll see. SLB says Coxer's like Vigo, talented but doesn't fit. That's very possible. I think the talent's there. Vigo I thought was talented, but he just didn't fit. Let's hope that's not the case. But if it is, let's hope that we at least are able to recoup our money and wish him well on his next endeavors. But hopefully he's able to silence a lot of critics this season. Gary says stick with him in terms of Sheldrup. Give him 6 months if he doesn't get enough time sent on a short loan back to the team. He was playing last year. I'd just be curious to know, like from a mental perspective, what another loan would do to him. I know that there was some interviews that were given in terms of, I think it was maybe his dad, his agent or something like that, in terms of like he wasn't happy or whatever the case may be. I don't know how much truth there is to that, but a player of his age, I know that there was a lot of clubs interested in him when he came to Benfica and he chose Benfica. So I'd be curious to know from like a mental perspective what that would do to him if he ended up going out on loan. But I hope that he doesn't have to go on loan and he's able to kind of take his opportunities, the ones that he does get, right? It's going to be one of those situations where unfortunately he got hurt. And now the very few initial opportunities that he does get, he's going to have to show up.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're not going to be able to coast through.
SLBES touched on, and I think that might help him, right? Like he's not in a spot where we have like in the midfield, center mid, like we have so many guys, right? Whereas out wide, Freddie, João Mario could play out there, right? Like on that left side,
play there, but you don't want those guys there, right?
Right, exactly. And he like that's for Sheldrup, that's like his natural. That's where he plays. So like I think that is gonna help him. Yeah. Again, vice versa. It's Freddie, like the one guy that Roger doesn't want to take off the field is the guy that's ahead of him. Which I mean, but hopefully, I mean, I think
they're both Norwegian, so maybe Freddie will be like, "Hey, I'm gonna pretend I'm hurt today, just so you can get a start."
Yeah, I'm more hopeful this season that Rogers learned from last year and is willing to rotate a bit more than he did last year. But I mean, time will tell.
Yeah,
we have the squad depth. We have the depth for it. So
let's hope he learned.
And we're gonna need it because of the amount of games we're playing this year.
Yeah. We've gone 70 minutes now, and I want to make sure that we can close this up soon. But I didn't want to not go through the comments. We had a lot of good comments. All of a sudden, everyone woke up and participated. But again, if you're listening and you haven't joined the conversation, let us know where you're watching from. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the thumbs up button on this stream. We appreciate it. And subscribe if you haven't already. Any other platforms, hit like, subscribe, follow, share, all those nice things. We appreciate you guys. Just quickly to close off the outgoings, not much conversation needed, but Leo Kokubu left. He went to a team in Belgium. He was at the Olympics with Japan. It's unknown in terms of what the fee was, or if there was a fee, but he's gone. Rafa obviously went to Besiktas. He already won the Super Cup and scored a few days ago. And Paulo Bernardo returned to Celtic, which was expected. I think it was just a matter of figuring out pricing. But he has, for 4 million, he moved back to Celtic.
We still have like 30, right? Salon?
I don't remember what the percentage was, but I believe it was fairly high.
Yeah.
Celtic isn't typically a club that sells increased price tags. So I don't know how much value that percentage is going to give us, but who knows? Maybe we'll get something back from that. Preseason vibes and getting into the season, I think we've kind of touched on a little bit of both of those. But so let's go into, how are we feeling going into the season? And those of you that are tuning in, right? We got Famalicão coming up at the weekend on Sunday, and just taking a look at our previous performances against Famalicão. I know that we played them late in the season last year. And was it the last game of the season? No, Rio Ave was the last game of the season.
Yeah.
We lost 2-0 against them in May 5th, which I think was basically like what
They could
dictated
update.
the end. Yeah, Puma scored that shot from outside the box, and Yusuf scored after. But looking at our previous visits there, September of 2022, we won 1-0. December of 2021, we won 4-1. September 18th of 2020, we won 5-1. And July 9th of 2020, which was that COVID year? Yeah, that's why I was in July. We tied 1-1. So, I mean, of our last
easy
5,
to go.
No, it's not. Especially, last year they had a good team. We weren't playing that well, so I think that of the last 5 trips there, we've lost 1, won 3, and tied 1. So, our historic results there aren't negative. But again, they're playing well. They're preseason. They have, they've won 4, drawn 2. They beat Trofens 3-0. They tied Leixões 1-1. They beat Penafiel 3-1. They tied they beat Casapia 2-0. They tied Deportivo La Coruña 2-2, and they beat Moreirense 3-2. So in terms of like top caliber teams, Casapia is in the Portuguese League. Moreirense is in the first division as well, and I believe Deportivo Coruña is second division in La Liga in Spain. Right, and then they played Leixões and Penafiel and Trofens, who are lower division teams. So, I mean, again, I expect them to be competitive. I expect it to be a difficult match, as typically it seems to be down there. How are you feeling going into the new season?
I'm not going to say great. I'm feeling good about it, right? Like, I think on
a 1 to 10, where are you at?
I'd put it an 8.
Okay, I like that.
Because I've liked what I've seen in the preseason, right? Like I like that we're back to the high press, right? Like we're doing it and doing it well.
It's like a song. What song was that? Doing it and doing it and doing it well.
It is a song. I don't know.
It is. If you guys know
the wrong guy to remember the song, yeah,
I can hear it in my head though. Carry on.
Pavlidis is scoring goals, right? Prestiani's playing well. Marcus Leonardo is playing well. Freddie is Freddie, right? Like he seems to never fucking miss a beat. Tino and Borreiros have connected well to start, right? Like we're playing well and we look good. We have a goal scorer who can finally fucking find the back of the net. So signs are pointing in the right direction, right? And I think going into the season, right, high hopes, and I'm very hopeful. I mean, from the start, right? Like I'm hopeful that we get a good start to the season, right? Like and don't come out of the gate struggling, because I think we as fans in a club, we need a good start, because if we start the season with a few slip ups, I think it's going to go, from a fan side, I think it can go south really fucking quick, right? And questioning the manager again, regardless of decisions or whatever. Like if it goes south, like it's always the manager's first one, right? He gets blame, and he should, right? He's the face of the team. He's the one that is deciding who plays, who doesn't. And I think we need a good start. And I think from what we've seen in the preseason, indications point that we're going to be playing similar to what we looked like that first season, right? Where we're pressing fucking high and we're trying to win the ball as quickly as possible. And there's not a ton of side to side. It's a little bit more direct. And we have players, right, that Marcus Leonardo's, Prestiani's, that have shown that they can dazzle and make things happen. And Pavlidis is, showing us already that he can find the back of the net with 1 or 2 opportunities. So, I'm hopeful.
Yeah, I share the optimism and the hope. Pavlidis got 7 goals in the preseason. We had 3 wins, 2 draws, 1 loss, 16 goals for, 5 goals against, 2 clean sheets in 6 games. Best with a goal, Artur with 2, Jomari with 1, Tino with 1, Rollheiser with 2, Prestiani with 2, and Pavlidis with 7. I think that the missing piece for us last year was having a striker, obviously, which our same city rival had, and we didn't, which I think was the difference maker. I do believe that we will see a Benfica blueprint closer to what we saw in first season. I think that'll make a difference. And then I agree that, right, the start of every season is important. This season is probably the start of the season is probably the most important of probably the last 5 years, I would say,
Yeah.
mainly because of how last season ended.
Yep.
The toxicity around the club, um, dare I say it, and the haters can come out of the woodwork if they would like. But I'm going to say it. There are fans that are just waiting in the bushes,
100%.
creeping through, waiting
1000%.
for things to start on the wrong
There's,
foot so they can come out of the woodwork and say, I told you we should have fired this guy. We should have
there's,
kicked the president out. We should have sold the stadium. We should have they're waiting. I
there's one
hate to
that's
say it.
normally on the panel here with us, right over here somewhere.
They're waiting. They're waiting in the shadows, and I hate to say it, but I think we all know it's true, and unfortunately, it is. There's people that are waiting for things to start off wrong, to be able to come in and say, "Hey, I was right." And I
Yep.
really hope, and those of you who had followed us, I was probably the only one left on the ship to defend Roger Schmidt in this entire panel. Bill held on for as long as he could, but he ended up jumping off the ship.
I didn't jump off because I didn't think Roger could manage. I jumped off because I thought it got like that. He was like, I can't go
Correct. I
through
think we
another
all got to a
season of
point in
this.
that
I think it
situation.
was more the
But
fans and the hate than it was that Roger couldn't do it. That's why I kind of
fair.
thought
And
he
I
was.
think I'm really hopeful that we start off on the right foot and we have a successful season, right? Because that's what we all want, independent of who's coaching, whether it's coach A, B, C, or D.
Right.
But I'm really, really hopeful that he can take us back to the promised land and really silence a lot of people and maybe even settle some of the toxicity around this club, because it's just so incredibly frustrating. Like even we saw in the preseason, just the absolute, just like some people, I feel like they just criticize just because they're bored and just like, fuck it, what can
Was
I
it
complain
the
about today, right? Where we had the neon training kits, right? Like the
Oh yeah.
symbols neon, and it was like the fucking end of the world, right? We shouldn't have a neon logo. Like, it's the training kit. Like, do we really care? Is it really that big of a deal what they train with? I get it. Some people are like these diehards and they feel like they like Benfica more than everyone. I get it. Everyone views it differently. I'll tell you what, there's no one out there that likes Benfica more than I do. I'll tell you that. You can like them just as much, but you don't like them more, right? Just because you care about the training kit and the symbol on the training kit doesn't make you more of a Benfica fan than I am. But like, we're gonna argue about shit like that, and then people are like, Otamendi said that the Olympics and the national team is most important. Like, can we contextualize this a little bit, right? Like, can we use our brain and think about like, what was he trying to say in the time of his career? And let's think about it. Why did Benfica let Otamendi go to the Olympics, but they didn't let Trubin go to the Olympics? Could that be because Trubin's our starting goalkeeper and we don't have an adequate replacement for him to start the season? And Otamendi, while he's our captain and leader, he won Copa America. Yes, Olympics could be important for him to add to his resume, right? Oh, and by the way, we have other center backs that we think could fill that role while he's gone and maybe even take the starting role. So
Yep.
sure, we're gonna let him, but no, instead it's like he's
And
our captain. He doesn't care about us. We pay his fucking like
doesn't care, but as soon as the Olympics ended,
yeah. He
he's
took no vacation. He was supposed to
no
come back like
vacation.
2 days
He
from
got
now,
back.
and
He legit got back
before
before
Di
Di
Maria.
Maria, and Di Maria's been off since Copa America ended.
But like, I get it, right? Like fans just the world we live in today, social media. It's easy to just type something and post it and criticize and complain.
Yeah.
I get it. It's just I don't know. We grew up in a time where internet was only a thing, and like in our late teens. Right. So I think it changed drastically for us. So we didn't grow up in the social media
Keyboard
era like some of these
keyboard
people.
warrior.
but it's just absolutely frustrating
Yeah.
to see. Like every time you open, every morning you like open social media, it's like, oh,
Something
all
new.
right, what do we fucking complain? Oh, the corner flags. Oh, the color. Oh, the corner flag. All right. Oh, the toilet paper is only 1 ply now at the stadium. Oh shit. All right, let's come. So yeah, I'm hoping for a good start to the season so we can get off to a good start, but also to hopefully settle the waves. But again, like I know there's people waiting in the shadows, ready to cause chaos. Let me just read some of these final comments. How Benfica season goes determines if Rui Costa gets elected. Well, the elections aren't until the following. They're not this season.
Like October, right?
October of 2025. So
yeah, next October.
He's safe for the 2024-25 season unless things go haywire.
South. Yeah.
And they have elections earlier than that, but I don't anticipate that happening. At least hope not. SLBS says, all I'm saying is that we better not sell Neds. Not sure that João Mario and Di Maria can handle it for the whole season, especially in the Champions League. I do think that if
I agree.
João Mario is another one that I think if we get an offer for him,
oh yeah, 100%.
I think that he potentially could be an option, especially with Renato coming now. I think that maybe
we have so many
again,
players.
Roger Schmidt likes him because of his ability to control the pace of the game. He's another one of those guys that, like, even if he plays well, people are just so fixated on criticizing him that like they criticize him anyways. We've criticized him, we've applauded him here on the podcast. We have very mixed reviews of, you know, do we like him, do we not? But I think overall, I think we're all capable of, when he deserves it, applaud him and congratulate him, but also when he deserves to be criticized and he's not playing well, I think we've also been open and honest about that as well. So, but I do think he's one of those guys that could potentially be on the fringe of, you know, if we get an offer for him, and from a salary perspective, he would also release a decent amount of salary there as well. So even if we don't get a lot from a transfer perspective, from a salary, he saves us a decent amount of money. Mikey says, don't like the Di Maria re-signing. It can go two ways. I don't like it if the expectation is that he's going to be an absolute starter. If that's the case, then I agree with you. I don't think it's a good start, or it's a good re-signing. I think that if the conversation was had that, you know, you can be a good 30 to 40 minute player for us, you're not going to start every game. You're important to us in the locker room from an experience perspective. You can start certain games. Other games, I think you're going to be more beneficial off the bench. Then I think that he's an absolute gem to have in this squad for a variety of reasons. But only time's going to tell in terms of what conversation was had. If he is coming to play the same role as he did last year, then I think we're in trouble. Let's hope that's not the case. Rui Pamplona says, some of our fans act like flies swimming in milk. I don't know what happens to flies in milk, but I'm assuming they act chaotic and crazy. And if that's the case, then I agree. I'm gonna actually Google or YouTube flies swimming in milk after the podcast to see what the reference is about. But I'm assuming it's basically what we just said. Quickly, lineups for this weekend. These are the lineups that we each picked. So Bill is going and let us know what you guys think is going to be the lineup based on what you think is going to happen. Maybe not necessarily what you would like to, what you think Roger's going to go with. Bill's going Trubin, Ba, Antonio Silva, Tomás Araújo, Best, Tino Barreiro, Neres, Cristiani, Auschness, and Pavlidis. Give me 60 seconds as to why you picked this.
Mainly, it was this has been the lineup for the last 2-3 games, except for Antonio in the back, right? We've talked about this a ton. Morato has the quality, he has the size, he has everything except the mental. Like he has mental. Every game he's good for 1 or 2, and we saw it against Fulham. There was one where I think it was Barreiros
passed it right to the
him,
guy in our box,
and then and then played a guy like a great through ball, but fucking wrong fucking net. And that's
we're the red team, not the white team.
Yeah, like he's just like he makes boneheaded decisions with the ball, and back there you can't make those mess ups. So I would slot Tony in, and I think maybe Tony got a little bit of punishment the last couple games because of what his brother said, but I think that's probably buried and now gone. Again, double pivot in the midfield. I think that's what we're going to see to start the season. The only question mark for me was the Cristiani. Is it Cristiani or is it Marcus Leonardo? I think he's leaning more toward Cristiani. We've seen him play more these last few games, and I mean, you can't go wrong with either one. And then I'm hopeful Neres plays out wide because I don't like João Mario and Freddie both on the field at the same time because it's both players do the same. Like they both like to compact the field and they get central. But in games where we have 11 guys behind the ball, we need creativity. We need width. Like we need to be able to break things down one on one, win a duel, make something happen. And I mean, Neres is one of the few guys on this field that can, or on the team that can make something happen from nothing. And he started the preseason looked great. The last couple of games, he's preferred João Mario out there, but I'm thinking with given the team we're playing, I think we need creativity, and Neres gets to start.
SLB says looks like the lineup I'd guess as well from the preseason we've watched. My lineup's exactly the same. I agree with what you went with. I think we talked about Morato in the text message recently of like, is he going to finally solidify himself? But then like 4 minutes after we had that conversation, he made that pass to the guy from Fulham, and I was like, nope, not happening. So I wouldn't be surprised if Tony and Araujo start partnership that won us the Youth Champions League, right? So they're very familiar with each other.
Yeah.
And I think they can give us some good quality ball back there. The midfield, Barreiro and Florentino, I think, is what he stuck with, and I think he's going to stick with it at least to start. My doubt was in the Cristiani Marcos Leonardo position, mainly because, and I think he'll go with Cristiani, one, because Famalicão is a team that tends to play open. They conceded 41 goals last season, so they're averaging more than 1 goal a game last season. In this preseason, in the games that they played, they only kept 1 clean sheet from their 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 preseason games, which was against 2 against Trofense, which was their first preseason game, and then Casapia. Every other game, the other 4 games, they conceded goals against Leixões, against Penafiel, Deportivo La Coruña, and Moreirense. So they're a team that likes to play an open game. They do allow spaces in between their lines. And I think because of that, a Cristiani, Neres, and Pavlidis partnership there could really, right? Cristiani's going to give you that trickery in between lines. He's going to go at defenders. He's going to give you that long distance as well. Neres is he's going to give us that direct play. He's going to go at guys, get down the line. Opposed to if you have a João Mario, like you said, right? He's more side to side, keep the ball, more secure in possession. Marcos Leonardo, the only thing that I think from a negative perspective versus Cristiani is he doesn't have the tidy feet, right, in between lines and tight spaces, which I think Cristiani will have an advantage here in this game. But I think because of the type of player Cristiani is, he's going to also be more willing to drop in when he needs to create that triangle in the midfield and help defend a little bit more than Marcos Leonardo will. But I think if there is a doubt here, I think it probably is that Cristiani role, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he plays João Mario.
Because I honestly wouldn't be shocked either. But
I think this lineup probably gives us the most assurance with double pivot, like you said, giving us the ability to press, to get up the field, and having some creativity. Whereas if João Mario starts in Ned's position, I think we're really going to be one-dimensional and require, an individual moment. Whereas I think with this offensive 4, right, we have 4 guys that can really create, whether it's Auschnitz getting down the line, whether it's Cristiani and Neres going direct, one-on-one, long distance, and then Pavlidis being able to link up play and be a poacher in the box. So, other lineup options, Oscar went with Best, Morato, Antonio Silva, Trubin in goal, Barreiro, Florentino, Auschnitz, Cristiani, João Mario, and Pavlidis.
Surprising that he put Morato there. He's one that has called him.
Yeah, I agree.
Rocks for brains.
Jason's was similar to ours. The only difference is that he went with Marcos Leonardo instead of Cristiani. So interesting that we had 4 lineups and 3 of the 4, or 3 different ones. Yeah. So,
and I think of all of these, Oscars might be the closest to
The
what we
closest,
probably see, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree with that. Rui says Morata has to go. He's like tank with no artillery. It's a good comparison. Morata as a market will get at least 10 million. Shit, I think we can at least get 15. I think rumor was they offered.
Didn't
Fulham
we
offered
pay like 10 mil for
we
him?
paid. I think it was maybe 8. Yeah, it wasn't a small amount,
Yeah.
but I think it was like 8, if I'm not mistaken. Morata would be a superstar at Celtic. Maybe they barely were willing to pay 4 million for Paulo Bernardo.
Yeah,
I don't
they
think they're
can't
going to go
afford him.
get. I don't think they're going to afford him. Quick prediction for Sunday, Bill.
So if it's my lineup, I'll say 4-0.
Oof.
I just the way we've looked pressing and winning the ball back and taking advantage of our opportunities, I think it's a recipe to fucking just roll teams. And I mean, we saw it in the Zebio Cup, like those 30 minutes,
20, 25 minutes. Yeah.
dude, like it just
it was
like
a
they
machine.
couldn't breathe, and that's the thing, that like the recipe, like the ingredients are there, like
And then Feyenoord went and won the Super Cup.
yeah, like it's there to have these type of games where, like, especially like early to start the season, right? Like most teams will typically, like, especially the smaller teams, you kind of ease into the season and then, like, your performances build up a little better. So like it's there to be had, but like I said, if it's the attacking lineup, that not the attacking lineup, but like the more creative lineup that I put up there, I think it can be like that. If it's the closer to what Oscar had, I think it could be a little bit of a struggle, because I think, like you said, it could be one dimensional at that point, and finding it, it's typically that first goal. Like if you can find that first one, then it gets a little easier. But like we saw last year, like if we couldn't score early, we were fucked. And I think having a creative team like that gives you the huge chance of scoring early.
Yeah, let's hope that's the case. I'm going to go with, given that they concede goals, I think I'm going to go 2-0, just because I think it'll be a more, maybe a more cautious start, right? First game of the season, we lost there, right? Let's just make sure that we have our bearings here, and then we can kind of go for it. But I might change that prediction depending on what the starting 11 is. But I'm hopeful.
I have an asterisk on mine right now.
I'm hopeful that I'm confident that we will start off the season with a victory, given what I saw from preseason. Yeah. But again, you just never know. Before we close out, actually, we have one more comment here. What do we got? Rui says 3-0. All right. Meets us in the middle. You went 4, I went 2. He's going 3. Like it. Before we close out, don't forget, if you go to sportkits.pt, start of a new season, new uniforms are out. Sportkits.pt, you can get 10% off your purchase. They have replica jerseys of all makes and sizes. They have the Benfica kits, the new ones. You can get 10% off if you use code Cantinho, CANTINHO, the number 10. You'll get 10% off of anything you purchase on there. So go ahead and check them out. Sportkits.pt, sport, S-P-O-R-T, kits, K-I-T-S. I messed up and always type in sports kits and add an extra S. So don't do that. Sportkits.pt. They ship anywhere, and high quality replica jerseys. They have sent us some, and I can confirm that they are very high quality. I
bought my kids some Portugal kits off of there for the Euros. Pretty fucking good. A lot better than like the stuff you get to Feta. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. We wouldn't associate ourselves with something that we didn't test ourselves and make sure that it was good quality. So you have our assurance that it is good quality. So again, sportkits.pt, use code Cantinho10 and get 10% off your purchase. SLBES says, great to see you guys back. Great show. Thank you for coming back. First one is in the books. Season 5 is off to a bang and start. Hopefully we get off with a W on Sunday. We'll be back next week on Monday. Our podcast will be regularly on Monday unless there's Champions League and we have to move things around or something comes up, but we are going to stick to a schedule of Monday evenings. 8:30 p.m. will be our kickoff time. We hope to see you back next week. Again, don't forget to follow, like, share, subscribe on all of our social media platforms. Thank you for tuning in. Viva Sport Lisboa e Benfica. And we'll see you guys next week. Have a good evening.